The chandeliers in the Beverly Hills ballroom didn't just hang, they floated, casting a liquid gold light over 200 of the most powerful people in California tech. The air smelled of ambition, expensive perfume, and the crisp promise of newly printed money. It was a victory party, the celebration of an $800 million acquisition, and at its center stood Victoria Sterling, radiant in emerald silk, her smile as sharp and polished as the diamond at her throat. Across the room, Marcus Chin watched her. He stood slightly apart, a quiet figure in a suit that was visibly off the rack amidst the sea of custom tailoring. He held a glass of sparkling water, his expression unreadable. To anyone glancing over, he was an anomaly, perhaps a mid-level IT manager who'd wandered in from a different event, or the quiet, unremarkable plus one of someone important. Victoria's laughter rang out, a bright, commanding sound. She was holding court, a bottle of 1990 Chateau Petrus in her hand, a $450 celebratory pour for the inner circle. Her eyes scanned the crowd, glowing with triumph, and then they landed on Marcus. The glow didn't dim, it hardened. "Darling," she called, her voice cutting through the murmur. "Come here. Don't lurk in the shadows." A few heads turned. Polite, curious smiles. "Who's that?" Marcus moved toward her, his pace steady. He felt the weight of the glances, the subtle reassessments. Ah, the husband. The one the formidable Victoria Sterling rarely spoke of, the quiet IT consultant. The dead weight. As he reached her side, she looped an arm through his, her grip tight. "Everyone, this is my husband, Marcus," she announced, her tone light, almost teasing. "He's been so supportive through all this. Isn't that right, sweetheart?" He nodded, offering a small smile to the semicircle of executives and investors. "It's your night, Victoria. Congratulations." But she wasn't finished. The energy around her was electric, intoxicating, and it needed an outlet. She raised the bottle of Petrus. A toast to new beginnings. To Titan Capital, for seeing the value the world missed. The circle raised their glasses. Victoria poured a generous splash into a fresh crystal glass, then, with a theatrical flourish, turned to Marcus. Instead of handing it to him, she tilted the bottle. The rich, crimson arc of wine didn't land in the glass. It poured over the front of his light gray suit jacket, soaking instantly into the wool, a dark, spreading stain. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. The only sound was the glug of the bottle. Then Victoria laughed. Not a gasp of oops or a horrified apology. A genuine, delighted laugh. "Oh, look at you. Always in the wrong place at the wrong time." She patted his wet chest with a condescending hand. "Don't worry, darling. It's just a suit. The adults are trying to conduct business here." The stunned silence broke into a wave of nervous, complicit titters. No one moved to help. They just watched, some with pity, most with the relieved fascination of spectators who are glad the spectacle isn't about them. Marcus stood perfectly still. He looked down at the ruin of his jacket, then up at his wife's laughing, triumphant face. He didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. In his dark eyes, something simply settled. A final piece of a puzzle clicking into place after 18 months of silent, meticulous assembly. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a plain white handkerchief, and began dabbing calmly at the stain. "You're right," he said, his voice so quiet the crowd had to lean in to hear. "It is just a suit." The moment stretched, awkward now. Victoria's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, unsettled by his calm. Then she turned back to her audience, the incident already a forgotten punchline. "Now, where were we?" "The integration timeline." Marcus turned and walked away, the squelch of his wine-soaked shoes the only mark of his exit. He didn't look back. Who Marcus really was. The struggling IT consultant narrative was Victoria's creation, and Marcus had never bothered to correct it. It was easier. Safer. 12 years ago, when they'd met at a charity hackathon, he was working in IT, a deliberate choice. It gave him cover. While Victoria climbed the corporate ladder with fierce, visible ambition, Marcus operated in the silent, frictionless world of pure capital. 19 years ago, in a cramped Stanford dorm room, Marcus and his roommate Raj Mehta had sketched the algorithm for a proprietary investment model on a whiteboard. Titan Capital was born not with a bang, but with a $50,000 seed check from Raj's skeptical uncle. Marcus, the numbers savant, built the engine. Raj, the charismatic visionary, became the public face. Their founding principle was anonymity. They would be the ghost in the machine, the silent partner in 100 different companies, the majority shareholder no one ever saw. While Raj shook hands on magazine covers, Marcus, who owned 60% of Titan, lived in a modest house in Santa Monica and drove a 4-year-old sedan. His name appeared on no masthead, in no press release. His net worth, a carefully guarded secret even from their own accountants in its full scope, was approximately $847 million. He'd kept it from Victoria for the oldest, simplest reason: he wanted to be loved for himself. Not for the power, not for the safety net of billions. When she'd laughed at his modest career, he'd bitten his tongue. When she'd complained about their small house, he'd promised they'd upgrade soon, all while the compound annual growth rate of Titan's funds ticked steadily upward in the background of his life. He told himself he was protecting their relationship from the corrosive touch of extreme wealth. He told himself he would tell her when the time was right. The time had never been right. The marriage that died slowly. Their beginning had been real. She was a fiery, brilliant associate at a venture fund, hungry to prove herself. He was the quiet, steady tech guy who fixed her laptop and listened, truly listened, to her dreams. He loved her drive. He used his invisible influence, a quiet word to Raj, a strategic introduction, to open doors for her. He never took credit. Seeing her succeed was enough. And she did succeed. Her salary leapt from $125,000 to $680,000. The compliments came in: "Victoria, you're a natural. Sterling, you have a killer instinct." She wore them like armor. Slowly, the armor turned inward. The late nights became expectations, not exceptions. Their conversations shifted from "we" to "I." She began to comment on his clothes. "Can't you dress for the world you want to be in, Marcus?" She dismissed his work. IT is a cost center, not a profit center. It's just maintenance. The digs were subtle, delivered with a smile, always framed as concern or helpful advice. He became her project. Her charity case. The man she'd stood by. He saw the flicker of embarrassment in her eyes when she introduced him at her company events. He felt the distance grow in their bed, cold and wide as a continent. He made excuses for her. Stress. Ambition. It's just a phase. He poured his love into the one thing that still felt real, the silent, mathematical beauty of his work. While Victoria networked at galas, Marcus was in his home office, analyzing supply chain disruptions in Singapore or modeling the impact of a new battery technology. Titan Capital grew, and with it, his invisible fortress of wealth. It was the ultimate irony: the more she dismissed him, the more powerful he became in the only realm that truly mattered to him. The night that changed everything. 18 months before the wine-soaked gala, Marcus came home early from a rare in-person meeting at Titan's unmarked offices. Victoria's car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. He heard her voice, sharp and clear, coming from her sealed study. "No, listen to me. The vesting date is the key. The day after. I'm not leaving $8.8 million on the table for sentimental reasons." He froze, his hand on the banister. Her voice was cold, analytical, the same tone she used in boardrooms to dissect underperforming assets. "Matteo has been deadweight for years. A nice man, but nice doesn't pay for a life in Pacific Heights. He'll get the house, the car, maybe a little alimony. I've run the numbers. With a good attorney, I can keep the settlement under $1 million. Call it $840,000. A clean break." Marcus felt the world tilt. The air turned to glass. Matteo. She'd called him by his middle name, the one she'd said she loved when they were first dating. Now it was a clinical label on a spreadsheet. "He's clueless," she continued, a hint of scornful laughter in her voice. "Thinks I'm just stressed. It's almost pathetic. Just draft the papers. We file the moment my equity is secure." There was a pause. Then, softer, but no less lethal, "I've earned this. I've carried him long enough." Marcus didn't move. He didn't breathe. He stood in the cool, dark hallway of the home he'd paid for with invisible money, listening to his wife of 11 years plot his economical disposal. The man who could move markets with a phone call was being assessed as a liability to be minimized. The pain was a physical thing, a cold spear in his chest. But beneath it, rising fast and hard, was something else, a profound, clarifying calm. The decision. He walked back out to his car, sat in the driver's seat, and watched the lights in her study window. He had 3 choices. Choice 1, he could confront her. Show her the statements, the ownership documents. Watch her face morph from contempt to shock to desperate, calculating apology. He could salvage the marriage through the raw power of money. The thought made him sick. That wouldn't be love, it would be a hostage negotiation. Choice 2, he could walk away. Sign whatever papers she sent, take his $840,000 of pity money, and disappear into his billion-dollar life. He'd be free of her. But she would win. She would take the $8.8 million, plus her soaring career, and her narrative would stand, the successful woman who finally shed her anchor. Choice 3, he could let her succeed. Spectacularly. He could insure her company, where she was a star, got the acquisition deal of a lifetime, the $800 million buyout from the mysterious Titan Capital. He could give her everything she thought she wanted. And then, he could show her the price tag. The choice wasn't hard. At 6:01 a.m. the next morning, he called his personal attorney, a man who knew every secret Marcus had. "David," he said, his voice eerily steady. "We need to structure an acquisition. And I need you to draft something called a Zimmerman Clause." 18 months of meticulous, silent planning began that day. Every conversation with Victoria, every piece of marital theater, became data for his algorithm. He encouraged her about the acquisition talks. He listened to her stress about due diligence. He was the supportive, proud husband, all while working from the buyer's side, guiding Titan's team, ensuring the offer was too sweet, too perfect, for her board to refuse. He made sure the final celebration would be at the Beverly Hills Hotel. He wore the cheap, light gray suit on purpose. He positioned himself exactly where she would see him. The humiliation before 200 people wasn't an accident. It was the final piece of the primer. It was the public proof he needed, for himself and for the world, of who she had become. It was the kindling. Now, as he drove away from the hotel, the smell of expensive wine and profound betrayal filling his car, the real work was done. The trap was not just set, she had already sprung it herself. The stage was set for the revelation. The trap is set. The merger agreement was a masterpiece of obfuscation. 73 pages of dense legalese, where fortunes were won and lost in dependent clauses and subsections. Victoria signed it with a flourish of her Montblanc pen, her signature sharp and confident on the line marked CEO and beneficial interest holder. The board applauded. Cameras flashed. Headlines were drafted, Victoria Sterling sells future for $800 million. She never saw the Zimmerman Clause. Few ever did. Named for a legendary contracts lawyer, it was buried on page 62, subsection 14, G, phrased in such dry, procedural language it seemed to concern standard arbitration protocols. In reality, it was a financial tripwire. It stipulated that any party found to be acting in material bad faith detrimental to the acquired entity's value pre-signing would forfeit all retention bonuses and unvested equity. Victoria, in her phone call 18 months prior, had meticulously detailed her plan to leave the company post-acquisition, viewing it merely as a liquidity event. She'd called her own drive and talent the sole sustaining value of her division, while planning to abandon it. In the cold eyes of the clause, that was bad faith. The forfeiture amount, $8.8 million. She also missed the key personnel retention addendum, which tied her own $12 million stock package to a 24-month continuity clause. Standard for executives. But the definition of continuity included a subclause about material stability of declared personal circumstances. A concurrent divorce proceeding, her lawyers would later explain with pale faces, would be considered a material change, triggering a full review and likely forfeiture. Marcus, watching the live feed of the signing in his home office, saw her pen touch paper. He didn't smile. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, hearing again the clink of the wine bottle against his glass, the sound of her laughter. The game was no longer in his hands. It was in hers. She had just signed her own judgment. The first integration meeting. 3 days later, Victoria entered the Titan Capital headquarters. The building was a sleek monolith of glass and steel, famous for its austere, intimidating silence. She was ready to conquer. She wore her power suit, the one she called the negotiator, and carried a presentation she'd spent 72 hours perfecting. She was ushered into the main boardroom, a space that felt less like a room and more like the bridge of a starship. A wall of glass looked out over the city, the world literally at their feet. Around a table of polished obsidian sat 10 people. She recognized some from Forbes covers, Rajiv Mehta, Titan's charismatic founder, at the head. The others were a mix of partners and senior legal counsel. "Victoria, welcome," Raj said, his smile warm but his eyes unreadable. "Please, take a seat. We're just awaiting one final member of our integration committee." She took the indicated seat, smoothing her jacket. "Thank you, Raj. I'm eager to align our visions." The door opened behind her. She didn't turn, assuming it was a late-arriving analyst. Then she saw the faces of the people opposite her shift. Not with recognition, but with a subtle, deep-seated deference. A chair was pulled out at the head of the table, opposite Raj. Marcus sat down. He was wearing a suit that fit him like a second skin, a deep navy that cost more than her first-year salary. His hair was cut differently. His posture, always calm, was now suffused with an unshakable authority. He placed a simple, old leather folio on the table. Victoria's brain short-circuited. Confusion, then a spike of irrational annoyance. What was he doing here? Had he gotten a job as an IT liaison? This was embarrassing. She opened her mouth to say something, a dismissive wife chiding husband line to salvage the moment. Raj spoke first. Victoria Sterling, allow me to properly introduce Marcus Chen, our founding partner and majority shareholder of Titan Capital. The words hung in the air, meaningless for 3 full seconds. Then they detonated. Founding partner. Majority shareholder. She stared at Marcus. His gaze met hers, steady, calm, holding none of the shame or supplication from the hotel. This was the look of a man in his own kingdom. I don't understand, she finally managed, her voice a dry whisper. I own 60% of Titan, Marcus said, his voice filling the quiet room. It was the same soft voice, but it now carried a weight that pressed on everyone present. I have for 19 years. Raj is the face. I am the engine. We thought it prudent, given our investment strategy, to keep my involvement private. He wasn't talking to the room. He was talking directly to her. It allowed me to see things clearly. To assess true value. And true character. The meeting proceeded in a surreal haze for Victoria. Marcus led the discussion with a quiet, devastating command of data. He knew her company's metrics better than she did. He quoted her own quarterly reports, pinpointed inefficiencies she'd missed, praised innovations she'd championed, revealing he'd known about them years before they became profitable. With every point, the cage closed. He wasn't just a rich husband. He was the architect of the very deal she thought was her crowning achievement. He was the mysterious backer her own board had whispered about. After 30 unbearable minutes, Raj adjourned the meeting. Marcus, I believe you wanted to discuss Victoria's retention package privately? Yes, Marcus said. He stood. Victoria, my office, please. The private confrontation. His office was not what she expected. No trophy walls, no gaudy art. Just floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes on philosophy, marine biology, and mathematics. A single photograph sat on the desk, a younger Marcus and Raj on a fishing boat, smiling wildly. He didn't sit behind the desk. He leaned against its front, arms crossed. Why? The word burst from her, laced with betrayal, fury, and a crumbling undercurrent of terror. Why didn't you tell me? All those years, you let me think, you let me say. I wanted a wife, Victoria, not a stakeholder. His voice was tired. I told myself I was protecting us. Then I realized I was just protecting you from having to show me who you really were. And you showed me anyway. He picked up a small, unremarkable device from his desk. A digital recorder. He pressed play. Her own voice, cold and clear, filled the room. Mateo has been dead weight for years. A nice man, but nice doesn't pay for a life in Pacific Heights. I can keep the settlement under $1 million. Call it $840,000. A clean break. She felt the blood drain from her face. She remembered the exact moment. The slant of afternoon light in her study. The taste of the green tea she'd been drinking. You recorded me? You left the window of your study open. The audio quality from the garden was quite clear. My lawyer advised documenting the bad faith. Bad faith, she echoed, the legal term clicking into place with the Zimmerman clause. Under the terms you signed, he said, his tone becoming clinical, your planned actions constitute material bad faith. Your $8.8 million retention bonus is forfeit. Furthermore, your $12 million equity package is contingent on 24 months of marital continuity. Filing for divorce, as you plan to do, nullifies it. He paused, letting the math do its work. Your total marital estate entitlement, given my provable net worth at the time of filing, would be approximately $127 million. The number landed like a physical blow. $127 million. That's mine, she stammered, greed and outrage flaring through the shock. We're married. Were you planning on declaring that $127 million to me 18 months ago? He asked, genuinely curious. Or were you planning on giving me $840,000 and calling it more than fair? She had no answer. The hypocrisy was a mirror, and she couldn't look away. The offer. I filed for divorce last night, Marcus said, handing her a single sheet of paper. It was a settlement offer. The number glowed on the page, $840,000. Take it. It's what you budgeted for me. It's clean, and it's fast. You walk away with your salary and your reputation, what's left of it after the board reads the Zimmerman clause justification my legal team is preparing. And if I fight for the $127 million? Her voice was barely a whisper. You can, he nodded. We'll go to court. My lawyers will play that recording. They will enter into evidence every demeaning comment, every text where you mocked me. They will subpoena your colleagues who heard the wine story. The narrative won't be about a greedy husband. It will be about a woman who humiliated and abandoned the man who built the very tower she was trying to climb. You'll get some money, maybe. But you will never work in this industry again. Your name will be a punchline. He looked at her, not with hatred, but with a profound, exhausted pity. The choice is yours. Take the $840,000 you thought I was worth, and we both move on. Or fight, and I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you understand the true cost of underestimation. The consequences. Victoria took the deal. The following 8 months were a professional and personal purgatory. She remained at Titan, a vice president now reporting to a committee that included Marcus. He was never cruel. He was impeccably, surgically professional. He praised her good work in meetings, supported her reasonable proposals, and treated her with a neutral courtesy that was more devastating than any revenge. It screamed to everyone, "She means nothing to me." The whispers were constant. She didn't know. She poured a $450 bottle of wine on a billionaire. She had $127 million and schemed for $840,000. The pity was worse than contempt. In February 2025, the divorce was finalized. She signed the papers accepting the $840,000. She walked away from the $127 million, not because the court made her, but because her own pride couldn't survive the exposure. The money was a monument to her error, and she couldn't bear to look at it. She left Titan 8 months later, citing new opportunities. She moved to San Francisco, telling people she wanted a fresh start. She dated a venture capitalist who liked her sharp edges. She pretended she was fine. But she was empty inside, haunted by the ghost of the life she'd casually incinerated. Marcus's new life. Marcus did not date for a year. He spent time on his boat, he read. He quietly dissolved his public anonymity within Titan, taking a more visible but still restrained role. He gave away more money than anyone knew. He met Dr. Elena Rodriguez at a lecture on cephalopod intelligence at the Santa Monica Aquarium. She spoke with passionate, nerdy enthusiasm about the problem-solving skills of octopuses. She made $89,000 a year. She drove a used Subaru with surfboard straps. On their third date, they split a $73 bill for pizza and craft beer, debating whether marine biology or algorithmic finance did more tangible good for the world. She won. On the sixth date, over burgers at a seaside shack, he told her. All of it. The money, the betrayal, the lesson. She blinked, took a thoughtful sip of her lemonade, and said, "So that's why you always look a little sad around fancy restaurants." Okay. Then she asked if he thought the Dodgers had a chance this year. They married on Catalina Island. A simple ceremony with 50 guests. The reception cost $18,000, most of it on fresh flowers and good wine. He danced with his new wife under strings of lights, her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in over a decade, he felt not the grim satisfaction of justice, but the quiet, unshakable peace of being truly seen. The final message. On his honeymoon, a card arrived at his home, forwarded by his assistant. San Francisco postmark. It contained one sentence, in Victoria's flawless script, "I'm sorry. You deserve to be happy." Standing on a balcony overlooking the Aegean Sea with Elena sleeping inside, Marcus read it once. Then he slowly tore the card into small pieces, letting the wind carry them out over the cliff, scattering them like confetti into the void. "Who was it?" Elena asked, coming out to join him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "No one," he said, meaning it. He held her hands. Some chapters don't need epilogues. The lesson. Success doesn't change you, it reveals you. The promise of wealth showed Victoria her true values: status over integrity, acquisition over love, a perception of power over authentic connection. She lost $127 million, but that wasn't the real cost. The real cost was the man who loved her unconditionally, the partnership she could have had, the life of meaning she traded for a life of appearance. Marcus learned that love without respect is worthless. That true strength isn't in secret power, but in the courage to be vulnerable with the right person. He learned that the right person doesn't value you for what you're worth on a balance sheet, but for who you are in your quietest moments. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't a grand spectacle of ruin. It's simply moving forward. It's finding a patch of sun on a quiet beach with someone who knows the price of your smile, and would never think to charge you for it. Victoria sought a fortune and defined herself by it. Marcus, who had won, let it go to find something richer. In the end, the billionaire and the biologist taught each other the same simple, priceless lesson: the most powerful currency isn't stored in banks. It's exchanged in glances, in trust, in the choice to stay, and in the courage to walk away.